Well, thank you for coming back to another episode of How Real Estate Changed My Life. And if you've listened to any of the episodes prior to this one, I'm really making an effort to find people in my circle that can honestly say real estate's changed their life, hopefully for the good, which I think almost everybody I know it has. But I want to get people that have different backgrounds, and every single person I've visited with so far has a completely different story on how they got into it. I've never met two people that had the same story. So this gentleman today, Don Crosby, has a completely different story than anybody else that I've visited with so far. And it's in a different type of real estate. So without giving away too much, I want to say, hey, thank you for coming on, Don. And I want to hear your story, and I want you to share it with all these people that are listening in today. And tell us about what your basic background, and then let's get into it.
I guess my basic background is I'm a father of 5 children, been married for 33 years, and live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and been here for 27 years, something like that. I've got a completely varied background, as you know, as we've talked and been friends for some time. I'm actually a professional cellist. I've been playing cello for many years, since I was in 7th grade. I drive race cars and did some football reffing for a while. I was in the Army. I was an intelligence officer in the Army, and I speak fluent Portuguese. So that's my background.
Yeah, you have a pretty broad background and life experiences compared to pretty much anybody I know.
Yeah, so a lot of things.
So you're here because of real estate, and I think you can honestly say real estate's changed your life. And so what was your first tiptoe into real estate, and why did that happen?
My wife and I used to listen in the morning when we were getting ready for church. We'd listen to Steve Davis on the radio, and he did the podcast for or broadcast for Lifestyles Unlimited, and they were single family and multifamily type stuff. You and I are familiar with that group. My wife and I joined up with it, and we started into the multifamily realm and investing passively through that. We had a single family home that we kind of backed into as we became landlords in that way. And doing that, we held that property for probably 10 years, had the same exact tenant in it the whole time, and it went fantastic. And look back at it, to be honest with you, it's one of these things where, Kyle, we think, wow, why weren't we doing that the whole time? We had other homes that we had owned, and we wished that we had held on to them and continued to just rent them out and do real estate with it. But that's how we had originally got into real estate itself. Now we've gone into a totally different area and varied off into more of the short-term rental arena.
So tell me your first endeavor on the short-term rental, how that went.
I was working as a director of sales for a guy that's really well known for multifamily, Will Crozier. And right after I left there, I decided, I wanted to stay in multifamily. And I thought, okay, well, I can go several different directions. And I thought, you know what? I've been hearing a lot about this Airbnb thing, and I think it seems like it's really growing. And this was back in 2018, the end of 2018. Mm-hmm. And I prepared myself by getting some training, and I did training with 2 separate entities. And I decided, okay, I'm going to go into the idea of doing Airbnb and VRBO and some of the others, OTAs, online travel agencies. And I got that training and went in that direction of doing short-term rental management.
So what was your first guest? How'd that go?
Oh, the first, we listed our home on a Thursday evening.
Now, this is the home you lived in, right?
Yes, it was our home. Yeah. At that time, like I said, we had 5 children, but at that time, 4 of them had left, and we still had 1 daughter home. And we decided at that time that we were going to go ahead and move out of our home and move into a rental and full-time Airbnb out of our home. So we listed it on a Thursday evening, and Friday morning we got our first booking.
That's fast.
Oh, it was just really quick. And I was like, wow, are you kidding? This actually does work. I was a little bit inspired. Let me tell you a little small story about this. The lady across the street actually had been doing Airbnb in her home. and she listed it, and it just started blowing up. And I thought, wow. And she and I were doing it simultaneously, not even knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to her across the street, and she goes, "Yeah, I'm preparing my house." And I was like, "No way, we're preparing our home." And we were like, "Hey, I really," she got done quicker than we did. It was a smaller home, and wow, it just took off. And ours just blew up from the very beginning. There was a big need in this area, and I had done a lot of research on it. We came, it was a bunch of young guys that were traveling through. They were there for 2 days, and we worried every single minute that they were at the home. We were just worrying, what's going on?
You get all these stereotypes and concerns.
Yes. Yeah. Boy, the worries that I had back then were just so many. Oh, what are they doing? Why are they driving out of the driveway that way? Why are there 6 people going outside at night at 10 o'clock at night? Well, I was just a wound up ball of nerves.
Mm-hmm.
And, since then it's nothing like that. I just, I don't worry about it. We're insured. I do a lot of research on the front end, and I do a lot of conversations with folks to make sure and do the vetting that's needed in order to have a good visit. Those people came in, those young guys came in, they had a good time, I'm sure. There was evidence of it after we left the house or when we got into the place, but it was just fantastic. Great stay, made good money on it, and never looked back.
That's awesome. And what was your next step?
Well, the next step was, seeing that, hey, yeah, this really does work, and this is successful. And I thought, okay, well, I didn't really have the funds needed in order to move forward and do too many other places. So I thought, okay, well, I'll go ahead and I'll look at the co-host model. So I got the training in co-hosting as well. I went to a guy that provided that training, and actually did some work for him on the side, helping him to get more folks like me that were going to do training. I did the co-hosting idea. Previous to that, I did training in the arbitrage model because I knew I wasn't going to be able to buy a lot of houses, although there was no reason why I couldn't have, because I could have used alternative methods for getting financing. But the next real thing was hooking up with a good-looking gentleman named Kyle that that gave me an opportunity, and we worked something out.
Well, so you mentioned a couple of things. One is you owned a home, Airbnb'd it out. Another one you talked about co-hosting, and another thing you mentioned was arbitrage. So do you want to go through and explain what each of those 3 different business models are when it comes to short-term rentals? There's
multiple different ways that you can skin the cat in this model. And the first model being, owning your home and renting it out, and I think that's the most disruptive to families is that, if you've got a home and you're trying to rent it out, and somebody comes, well, you've got to leave and you've got to go to either another home you own or rent out another place that's less expensive, and then keep the VIG and or the difference between what you made and what you have to spend, right? Your expenses. So when, like I said, we had moved out into a rental home, and we were able to rent that out monthly and still make enough money on the other end to make a decent amount of money every month, almost like, replacing a paycheck. So that's the ownership model. The second model was which I was trained in arbitrage. Arbitrage meaning that you find a home that someone owns, and you enter into a leasing agreement that allows you to sublease that home. And if, that may be in an apartment, that may be in a regular single family home, but either way, you enter into the agreement, which allows you to then take that home, prepare the place, set it to your standards, and get everything in there that needs to be set up. And then you put it on to one of the OTAs, preparing to then lease it out.
So you have control of the property, but of course the landowner or the property owner, you have permission to do this, and you've got some insurance to make sure that things go smooth. But it's a less risky than owning the house, but there is the risk that you don't have anybody want to stay with you, and you just are covering the rent and the electricity and such. But
Right.
But you still make that spread. So you're not getting the appreciation, you're not getting the equity benefit of the property, but you are getting the cash flow. So you're running a business. So now
that's right.
Now, what was the next one? The co-host.
So from that standpoint, it's not really investing in real estate,
right?
But it is a real estate business, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The next approach is what's called co-hosting, and co-hosting is finding someone that has a home that would like to do Airbnb or like to do short-term rentals, but has no knowledge of it. And they don't know what it takes to prepare the house. They don't know what it takes to get on the OTAs. They don't know what it takes to properly, clean it and to really run the business itself. So then what I do is I come in and selectively I work with other clients that have homes that I will research and use all of my tools within my industry to find out if that house will truly cash flow, so that not only, because I'm not going to enter into an agreement to co-host somebody's home just so I can make money and they can lose. That's just not a win-win. And they're going to be unhappy. They're going to be all up in, my business, and that's not a good start. So what I do is I do the research up front, let each of my clients know, this is what you should expect as far as revenue. And then we talk it out as to whether that's going to really work or not. And then we have a negotiated agreement on my end, on my portion of what I'm going to earn. Then what we do, just so you know what the finances look like and something like that, not to get too deep down into the weeds, but the finances were something like that is I would earn my money right off the top as a co-host agreement. And then we pay all of the expenses, and anything that's left over then gets sent on to the owner. Now there's hybrid models from that. And you and I know how that hybrid model works, is that we decide, what the split's going to be. And I do all the work and I prepare it and everything else. And there's cost involved with all of that and the preparation and all that.
Sure. Well, in a minute, let's talk about a lot of there's different guests that would stay in a short-term rental, right? So sure. It's no secret I've got a property down in Orlando, Kissimmee, right next to Disney World. And if you're looking for a place to go on vacation, this is my plug, ourdisneyhome.com. Rent it up for me. So so
it's a nice place.
It is nice. It's nice. And you helped me with that too. I appreciate that, on kind of getting things kind of organized. And it's a different model. That's for people going on vacation. They're there for a week. It's an experience, really. And it's kind of like a home away for home, all that. And then there's, I have those two others, and this is where you've come in with me and you run them. So I've got one in the Fort Worth, Tarrant County side, and then I've got one out in Wichita Falls that you've helped me with. And those are very different types of guests, right? So tell me what type of guests we typically get in those two houses, or one of your other ones that are in Tarrant County.
Yeah, that's great. It's in fact I think that's really important to understand, that you really have to have a hook. You have to have a differentiating factor for each home. And you have to go in with a particular vision of what that home and who's going to be coming there. And in this case, of course, you have a great big barn in the back of your home in North Tarrant County area. And that's the A&M barn that you have back there. Of course, you're an Aggie, and bless your heart. But
I'm in part of the cult. I'm in. I can't help it.
And so, and the house itself is actually burnt orange in the front of the house.
It was a good deal. Yeah.
Well, not everybody.
That was why it was a good deal, I guess. I don't know.
Exactly. And so we called it the rival home. Well, of course, one of the main things we put up there is that A&M barn, because, you got, 50% of the folks out there that might be Aggie fans, bless their hearts. You're going to try to get, folks that are interested in the Aggie idea. But also, the fact that we call it the rival home, with the house being burnt orange and the A&M barn in the back, we try to play off both sides, right?
Right. And it's got a big patio in the back. It's got a small little basketball court in the back. It's got, you can do the fire pit, the grill. So it's on an acre. So there's space for people to spread out.
Big home. It's a big home. We have 5 bedrooms in there, and literally the house could hold about 25. I think at one point we figured out, with all of the bed space and futons and
that scares people to say that, but it's not a party pad. No. From what I've noticed, our typical guest is a company that's looking to house their workforce that's coming through for a project?
We have not, that I know of, had any large parties, you might say, where people are lined up down the road and things like that. We've had large groups, no doubt about it, but we've had large parties where they've come in and hired a DJ and had a bunch of people parked down the road and made a lot of ruckus. No, we haven't had that.
No, they didn't invite me if they did.
Well, that's right. Yeah. and I, because I do my job, and that is to make sure that we're not going to have the wrong type of people and the riffraff coming in and causing problems. There's no doubt that people come there with their families, large groups, and have a good time. But that is the distinguishing factor for that home. The other home, Wichita Falls, mainly what we found is we have a lot of door-to-door sales groups, because that house also will hold 12 to 14 people, something like that. So we have outside sales groups that come in. We'll have, a group of 10 or 12 guys that staying in there and going out and doing their sales for solar or pest control or alarms or whatever it might be. And then they come back at night and crash out,
It's a perfect setup for them.
Yeah, it's a great setup. Perfect place. And we've had so many of them. And then we have guys that are doing construction, guys that are doing, I think one group was putting together a greenhouse. We have people that, service the Shepherd Air Force Base up there, graduations for basic training and other advanced individual training that they do up in that area. So it's a good setup. It's real close
so where I was leading on that, and you did a good job explaining, is everybody has a stigma and stereotype that short-term rentals are just for party pads or vacations. And man, that's really just not been the case for my two that are in Texas at all. Like, not at all. It's all been like more business associated. And you got the insurance claims too. We've lucked out. I mean, let's start with the North Tarrant County one. So you got referred to me because I had this house and I was doing some rent by the room model, and it was, I made some money. And my neighbor he said, "Hey, you need to talk to Don Crosby about Airbnb. Like, he's throwing out some crazy numbers." And I'm like, whatever. And I get a lot of people thrown at me, and I ignore most of them. And it's not because I don't like people; it's just because I have to be protective over my time. But when two different people that are not related say, "Hey, you need to talk to this guy," I'm like, "Okay, I'll talk to him." And then so I met you over at my house over there, and we walked it. And I want to say this house at the time would have probably rented for, I don't know, $2,400 a month, maybe. No, it was a good house. I mean, nothing stellar about it. It's an older home, but been remodeled and good location, not in a neighborhood necessarily, but not in commercial. And tell me what you told me about the house.
Well, we looked at it, and it was being renovated a little bit. And it was a little dated, and I said, well, we need to do a little bit of changes here. And the thing that I'm most proud of with that whole thing, I'm going to take it a different direction for 1 second, and that is when you told me that your wife came back and walked through it, and she was just astounded at how well we had decorated. And she goes, "I want to move back in." And,
she might not have been that serious, but okay.
Well, of course, of course. But I mean, that made me feel good. I mean, at least you told a little white lie and made me feel good about it, that we had done such a great job of preparing the house and really making it look good.
Oh yeah, it was at least as good as when we used to live in it. Yeah, it was very nice.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what we did was we did what we could to really make the house super nice. And I told you, I said, I really think that this house can do probably $8,000 a month, something like that. I was thinking it might.
I think you said about 8.5, and I was like, whatever. I tell you what, if you do $3,500 a month, I'll keep doing it. And, I was thinking you might get $3,500 a month. I didn't think.
Right. Yeah.
When you said 8,000, I'm like, man, my friends are hanging out with somebody that's smoking crack. And then I was like, this is maybe 3,500. Pays my underlying note. It'll pay my electricity, my utilities, internet, and it'll be worth having. And I'm just looking at it as the real estate investment side, not the business side. So tell me how we did the first month.
Yeah. So the very first month, I think we did like $12,000 something.
I know, isn't that wild? $12,000.
Yeah. I know. It's just, well, the problem is that I knew it would do higher than $8,000, but I didn't want you to know that.
Right.
Because, there's no sense in, over promising and under delivering. So I said, I think we'll do 8.5. And you were like, you seem to be pretty happy about that. We negotiated a good arrangement.
It worked for you, worked for me, and incentivized
yes,
you.
Exactly.
The more you make, the better I do. It's a good relationship. And
exactly.
So everybody hears that $12,000 first month out. Is it $12,000 every month?
Oh, absolutely. No, I since then we've done that, and this house has been going for close to two and a half years, and I think we've done that. I'd say 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, at least 5 months. At least 5.
Yeah, at least 5 months we've done that kind of money.
Now, how many months have we had that were less than 2,500? And I'm going to say 2,500 because that's kind of my all-in what you would expect my run cost to be.
I would say
there's a few.
I would say 2, maybe 3, but I think probably not.
Yeah, and if it wouldn't, otherwise it'd be really close. I mean, we only had a couple that were really low, but so it's not always 12 grand, but then it's not always 1,500 either. But it's a up and down. It's not for the weak. This is a model where you got to know that you're not going to do well every month, and you might have a drought for a while, but then you might have some great big wells that you bring in. But you got to be ready for it. Like I could not see myself owning just short-term rentals because I like the steady long-term rental that I know it's coming in. What my expenses, I make less, but also sleep at night better.
Yeah. I would say, Kyle, if I may, I think we started probably around July of 2020.
Right. So we missed a summer for the most part. I want to say
21,
August.
21. Yeah, 21. Yeah, that's what it was. 21. Yeah. 2021 is when we started.
That's 2 years.
Yeah, it's close to 2.5 years, right? And so, in that time, there's been so many changes in just the short-term rental market. You and I've cried on your shoulder so many times, and you kept me from jumping off the cliff, and we've stayed steady, and you learned that in your experience that, hey, listen, these things come. That's why you're in business for yourself. You got to be able to adjust and move and prepare for the next move and what you're going to do. And so it's, we've done that. We've had to make lots of iterations with how we present the home and everything.
So let's talk about that Wichita Falls deal on the first, because I think the way we came out of the gate on that one is a great story. And everybody comes to me because they've seen an article or something on Bigger Pockets about how, insurance claims and all that kind of stuff. And it's not something you just roll into, but you've got a network and you work it. So tell me how this Wichita Falls deal worked before we even had that thing up and running.
Yeah, I want to say that we had maybe 1, possibly 2 stays, and then boom, I through my network and talking with folks, got connected with a lady that has really helped us to put folks in that house, and in that in particular, we got a family of 3 or 4 that their house had some flooding, and it was right there in Wichita Falls, and they needed that house for, I want to say, 5 months.
It ended up being for a good length of time. It was, I think, 4 months, but it was
4 months.
It was good money.
Yeah, I couldn't remember whether it's 4 or 5, but 4 or 5 months, and I don't know if you wanted to mention the number, but I think
go for it.
Yeah, I think that we were bringing in like $7,500 a month on that house, something like that.
Yeah,
maybe $8,000. Yeah,
and that house would normally rent for $1,600. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, and we also got deposits on for the animals, and these people were very. By the way, I met them at the house.
They were great. Yeah, I met them too.
They were great people. We met them at the house, looked at showed them around and everything else. Very, very good people. They were teachers. It was a great fit, and they really took care of the house very nicely, and very, very minimal damage at all, if anything. And it just worked out great. They were there for 4 or 5 months, and then
the only damage they had while they're there, which was not them, it was because I just bought the house, remodeled it because it was an old rental property. I bought it off of them and remodeled it, cleaned it up. And so there was just some like natural things that needed to be addressed that we didn't know during remodel. Sure. And so when somebody moves in, then they start to see things. And like, I don't remember, I think the HVAC had some challenges.
That's
and it worked when we were remodeling it. But when somebody's really running it, it became a different story. So we had to address that. And I don't care. $7,500 a month in rent. I can handle that.
Right.
So
Right.
it
Yeah.
was, it
So
was
that
nice.
went really well. Since then, we've looked at different options. And of course, through your management company, I've arbitraged multiple other houses. Won't go into a lot of details about them, but, several of those houses have done very, very well for us.
And what's interesting about that is typically the houses that don't do good as a traditional rental, like a long-term traditional rental, may sit on the market for a long time because you're just waiting for that right person to want to rent it. Usually these are larger homes. People that are renting a larger home are fewer and farther in between because typically they're going to buy something or they're going to stack kids into like 2 kids, 2 bedrooms instead of 1 kid per bedroom. So, the larger houses don't rent real well, but they kind of lend themselves to what you've focused as your niche in short-term rentals. So they make sense. So when I can go to my client and say, hey, well, I got this gentleman that he's done me well. He's done some other people well. We can rent it to him. He's on the hook. He has to treat it as a traditional rental. And I think every single one of them said yes. And I think you pay a little bit more than a traditional rental just to put their mind at ease. You may not see this on your end, but I see it on my end, is if I put a traditional tenant in a rental house, they're in there for a year, walking on the carpet, rubbing on the walls, cleaning or not cleaning the toilets, whatever. So it's lived in, and maybe they're rough, maybe they're clean. But with a short-term rental, like in your scenario, it's getting looked at every single time somebody moves out and every time somebody moves in. So it's getting cleaned. Everything's like buttoned up. And the thing is, you have a vested interest to make sure that thing looks good and is well taken care of, as opposed to a traditional tenant, not at all. Like they're like,
it has to be.
It's whatever their standards are is what you're going to get. And you've got hotel level standards because you're running a hotel basically.
Yeah, it has to be 5-star ready at all times. And that's what we, that's our tagline with HomeStay Pros. By the way, I'll give a little tag, homestaypros.com. You can go to homestaypros.com, or you can call me at 817-724-4968. Our tagline is legendary hosting, 5-star stays. So we have to have the house ready at all times, 5-star ready for any visitor that might come and stay with us. We don't want to give it any different for your stay than the next guy. So that's the beauty of someone that owns a home that wants to put a tenant in there. We're going to take care of that place. We have to. It's imperative that we keep that house 5-star ready. And so, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the niche that you discussed, and that is, I have a particular niche that I wanted to stay in, and that is, if you consider, there's a bell curve of homes and the type of homes that we're using for short-term rentals. Could be a studio apartment, just a studio, and then a 1-1, and then a 2-1, and a 2-2, going up to the curve, the top of the curves being the 3-2s. The majority of your homes are going to that are out there will be in your 3-2s to 2-1s, that kind of thing, apartments and smaller houses. And then on the backside, you still have a good supply or portion of your population that are in the 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom, et cetera. And that's where I decided to focus my business, was to be able to serve those that are on the back end. I know it's larger, and it causes a little problems with, first of all, the amount of people and the amount of costs that it costs to prepare the home and things like that.
But there's less competition because most of the people that are doing this, they don't go out and buy a bigger house, or they don't go out and lock up a bigger house. They want to start small and see if it works. So you got the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3 bedrooms. So you got a lot of competition down there. And there's a lot of demand too. But when you figure out your return on your investment, I think those bigger houses, you get demand a little bit more rent, and you have less competition. And so it works out.
It's sink or swim. It really is. It's feast or famine. For the large houses, you could have lots of groups coming in and for big activities and things like that. And when they do, business is good. But when it's, there's not these larger groups there, for example, we have one of our tech stack tools is called RankBreeze. RankBreeze goes out every day and it pings Airbnb and VRBO and sees where are you ranking on their pages. And it gives you an idea about what page you are and what ranking you are. So if you're 15th person down on the first page, you're page 115. And so what we do is we monitor that every day. We have a chart that we look at in our daily conversations with my guys that work with me. Paul, for example, Paul's been just a godsend. He's really, really helped me a lot. And he came from one of my property management software companies, and he came over and worked for me full time. And so we go through this thing and we look at the rankings, see where we're at, and we constantly adjust to try to get, higher up in that rankings. But if you're pushed down in those rankings and you're wondering, hey, why am I not getting any bookings? Mm-hmm. It's because you're not getting close up to the top.
It's like Google rank.
Exactly. It's just like your Google rank. And so what you talked about before is that, on the back end, there's not as much competition. Well, that's exactly right. And so we may be a house that fits 15, 16 people. That 15, 16 people home on Airbnb is not going to be shown when you're a group of 5. It's going to be shown, but it'll be in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, probably 5th page. Mm-hmm. So you're going to really, really have to look to find a house that fits 15 people, or if you're a group of 5 searching for 5 people. Yeah. Most people don't understand this. And this is some of the stuff that you really got to understand in order to compete on Airbnb. Everybody makes it look, all of the gurus make it look easy. Oh, you just do this, do that, do the other. Right?
And there are a lot of scammers. And I think you briefly hit on how you pre-screen people before you approve them to come into the home. And there is a lot of scammers. I've had one scam on my house in Florida. I think we might have had one in my North Tarrant County house, but it happens. And when it happened to me, it cost me a couple grand. But did it really? I mean, it could have just been empty, and it cost me what my cleaning fee was. So I had to look at it that way. And I'm like, hey, it's a cost of business. There's things that are going to happen. If I owned a grocery store, I'm going to have shoplifters. So you have to keep that in mind. And you got to make sure that be ready for, you're going to have to, replace lamps every once in a while, light bulbs every once in a while. Like it's just, and you're going to do a deep clean periodically instead of a regular clean. You're going to do deep clean. You got sheets that you're going to have to replace. So there's just a cost of businesses that people don't think about when they jump into this. And it's a one-time expense, and you got to have it reserved, ready to go, because you're going to replace things periodically, not because of anything bad that they did, just naturally you're going to replace things.
Right, no doubt. And you did say about North Texas, we did have one. It wasn't that long ago, probably a couple of months ago. A guy came in. By the way, a little tip for folks: if the person says that they're a host already, be watching, because they've already come in with an idea, a preconceived idea about how their house is and how great their home is and how yours is not up to standard. And so a lot of times those people, I really have a conversation with, let them know that, listen, this place is not brand new. It's probably not up to the same 100% standard that you are, because you want to play it up with them. But this guy came in from West Texas, and they went in and actually pulled the bedding off to observe the actual mattresses and find if the mattresses had anything on them. They pulled up the sheets and looked under for the mattress protector to see if it had any stains on it. And then they zoomed in real close for things that were probably that size, and they made it look like it was a big, huge stain. And and then they said cockroaches and bugs and spiders and everything. And we went in and afterwards, and no. And then what did they do? They said that they left the house. Well, they didn't leave the house immediately and find another place. They were there for 4 or 5 hours. And afterwards we came there, and there were huge beer bottles and everything else.
So they just went in to party and then wanted to get their money back. And it didn't have anything to do with legitimate business. So there was.
And Airbnb, by the way, sorry to interrupt. Airbnb just gave their money back.
Is it evil Empire?
Right. Yeah. They just basically said, that happened? Great. Oh, there was a stain there? Oh, yeah, sure. Here's your money back.
I've had a little bit of run-in with Airbnb on my Florida house, because I do the management on that one, and I've got cleaners down there. And I've had one claim where they kind of they did a bunch of little things that just added up. And one of them was, got that pool that I think they call it a Florida pool that has like the screens that go around it. Yeah. And their little, I'm going to assume it was their kid, busted a bunch of screens. I'm like, they had to go to a lot of effort to bust my screens, and they're not overly expensive to fix, but people don't do it for free. And I had to go back and forth with Airbnb on getting my claim, because they say they insure everything, and they don't. Right. I don't know. They taken one of my because I have themed rooms. So I got a Star Wars room. They took the the night light that looked like a baby Yoda. So, I mean, just stupid stuff. And it was just a pain in the rear end. So I had to produce receipts for what I'd originally purchased. It was just a pain. I didn't even get remotely what it cost me to kind of fix it, which it wasn't bad. It was less than $1,000, but they gave me a couple $100. And I'm like,
yeah,
I almost wasn't even worth my time to like harass Airbnb. I could have just spent my time talking to somebody that I like you, instead of wasting my time with them. But the thing is I've been fortunate, and I worked the system to where on my Florida house, half my bookings are not from, over half my bookings are not from Airbnb. Yeah, they're direct books. I get almost all of it from Facebook, and I get a couple from referrals. It's because it's relatively new. I've only had it for a few years, so I do get some repeats. Not that many people go to Disney World every year, but
like me and my family,
like you and your family.
We love it.
Well, I mean, that's why we ended up down there, because we were down there several times a year. It seemed like for several years in a row, and it's like, why not? Might as well. Like, it's a good investment for our family long term and build memories. So, and it was fun. We've had a great time with that house.
You touched on something about trying to collect from the OTAs. They're just like any other insurance company. Insurance companies don't want to give their money out. They don't want to give their money away. They consider it their money, and they're not going to give it to you.
And there's a lot of people that probably try to abuse it too. So, all the honest people get the raw end of the deal because of the dishonest people that try to abuse the system. So I get it. I understand that. So that's just something that comes up.
That's part of my job, is to educate my clients, folks that I work for. I'd say a third of my places are arbitrage. A third of my places I have clients, and a third of them I own. I have to educate everybody on, hey, listen, we don't want to try to claim that $200 such and such, because we're only going to get $50 anyway, and it's not going to be worth our time.
And you're red flagged.
And you're red flagged. Exactly. You're going to get red flagged. You're going to get shadow banned, and you're going to get pushed down in the rankings because you're a troublemaker.
Yeah.
And that's, you and I have had to fight back from that several times, not because of that particular scenario, but because of, other issues that they have regenerated their algorithms probably 6 times since I've been doing this business. And every time makes me pull my hairs out, because we have to start over. We get knocked down the rankings, and then we're not getting any bookings, and we're scrambling to try to figure out, okay, how do we get ourselves back up in the rankings and such? So.
Yeah. Tell everybody that's listening, what should they know about Airbnb that they might not have known, on like whether or not to invest in one or what have you?
Well, let me just say, short-term rentals is the real more.
I know. It's like Igloo, like Kleenex.
Yeah, exactly. You have to do your research up front. First of all, the most important thing I have to tell people is, right now, you've got to know the regulations in your city. Mm-hmm. You have to know whether it's legal. You have to know whether your HOA will allow it. Look at your CCRs and find out whether that's something that you're allowed to do in that area.
Good point. We've seen a lot of that.
Yes, we have. And we got to make sure that from the very beginning that you're legal, because if not, it's going to bite you on the back end. You're going to be right back to square one. Mm-hmm. So do those things. Find someone like me, who I will, for no cost, go out and give you a brief overview of what your place is going to cash flow. I have the tools necessary to go out there and take a look and find out what kind of cash flow you should expect. But the most important thing is it legal in that area, in that metropolitan area, or whatever, in that city? If it's not, you're going to have a hard time. There's some legislation come down the road that will probably make it legal in the state of Texas. We don't know for sure. The Supreme Court has always ruled on the side of short-term rental hosts and folks, the individual property rights. They basically have said that it's legal, but that doesn't mean a city's not going to make it difficult for you to, and they say, no, it's not legal.
Neighbors are going to make it difficult too.
Or neighbors. Yes. We've had lots of problems with that. Not you and I particularly, but some of my clients.
Like they had problems with their neighbors. And it's because of stereotypes they hold, not because of any real events or anything.
Exactly. Now, are there events from time to time that are scary? But it's very, very, very rare. We've had very, very little. I mean, I've had thousands of stays at this point, and we've had very few.
You got to make your property desirable to the type of person that you want to stay in your house.
Absolutely.
Like, the ruffians aren't going to want to go stay in one of your nicer places because it just doesn't make sense. It's not what they're looking for. Like for my Florida place, it is designed for people that are going as a multi-generational family vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So do I get crazy wild parties? No, I don't, because it would be of no appeal to them because it's not something they would want. It doesn't make sense for them. Yeah. So you have to make your place presentable for who you think would want to rent it and who you want to target. So I know there was years ago, there was a house near where I lived. It blew my mind, but it was a house and it was a scrapbooking home. And it was a home that was set up just for women to get together to do a scrapbook weekend party. So they would put their scrapbooks together. And this is what they're telling me.
Sounds wild.
Yeah. So they might have just made this all up so the husbands would approve of it. But it was just they would go and scrapbook all their kids' pictures and do all the scrapbooky stuff. And I just blew my mind that they would rent and they'd have bunk beds in these rooms and they'd just have all this scrapbook stuff. So I guess the house was set up with lots of tables and scissors and glue. I have no idea, but I was shocked when somebody told me they had a scrapbooking party at this house and that's all that house is for, scrapbook parties. It was pricey for the weekend, but they're fitting, I don't know how many, a lot of ladies in there.
Right. Well, I forgot to tell you that I'm starting a new scrapbook party.
There you go. And you'll know how to market it. Go to the scrapbook parties.
Exactly.
And hand out your flyers.
But as far as, continuing the idea of the tools that we use, and I use various tools, a pricing tool, Price Labs. I used to use Wheelhouse. I use RankBreeze, which helps us see the ranking. I use a property management tool called HostAway, and that basically takes all of the 11 homes that I have, and it helps me to put them all in one calendar.
And it's very user friendly. I use OwnerRez for my Florida house, and I'm not going to say it's overly easy to use because it takes an effort to set it up, but it's very robust and it does a lot of automation that makes it a little easier for me. And I'm not even remotely using it to its capabilities, but it does help me integrate into different, if I wanted to go to VRBO or Airbnb, like it'll make it all uniform. So it all goes through my calendar, doesn't overbook. That's important. And, I can
Guesty, HostAway, OwnerRez, those are all different
I can have my locks set up to where my digital locks can auto-generate codes off of somebody's phone numbers and just all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of nice. And the Price Labs, to give everybody a good idea what that is they take, like on my house, my specific neighborhood, I've set up example homes in my neighborhood, and it'll take those and say, hey, this is what they typically rent for these dates. And we see that people are booking specifically for this weekend so far out, or this month so far out. So it'll adjust my pricing to demand. So that way I can get more when there's more demand, and it'll automatically lower the price when there's less demand. And you can kind of tell it how much you want it to give up on the top side. Cause like I could say, well, no, I want a minimum price. And if it doesn't get it, just let it sit vacant. I don't care. That also is a good point. Don't rent your place for too little, because that's when you pick up the riffraff.
That's exactly right.
But then it'll also say, hey, Christmas is, that's a $900 night.
We use, this is another little tip for everyone that's either doing it or considering doing it. And that is, we use Price Labs in a different way. Price Labs actually gives you a heat map of the demand for the area. Mm-hmm. It actually gives you a kind of a color score: light green, a little bit darker green, blue, and a dark blue. The light green meaning no demand or very, very low demand, and the dark blue meaning very high demand. We use those to help us in our marketing, whether we're going to spend a lot of marketing dollars or less marketing dollars than this area. Oh yeah, we can expect that we're going to get, because we have high demand, we're going to expect that we're going to get something. Now, I play a different game as far as my pricing schedule. A lot of people will drop their pricing way out, and as they get closer, they keep dropping the price. No, I go higher, because that means there's less supply in the market, and it allows for me to catch those, because most of my bookings are within the last week. And I would say half of those are in the last 2 days.
Yeah. Because I'll ask you, is my house going to be rented next week? And you're like, I don't know. And then the next day you're like, yeah, it's rented. Like, it's very short notice. And that's another thing that Price Lab tells me for my Florida house, your average booking is 90 days out, because people know they're going to Disney World next week. Like they know,
totally
they know
different.
They're going through. So it's very different. So I love that program. It tells you how much people are paying, how far out they're booking, what percentage of the places around you are booked. it's a really neat tool, and they can only do so much. It can't tell you everything, but it's a pretty powerful tool.
It is a powerful tool, and we use it every day, as I mentioned. But the other thing that you understand about it is that you have to differentiate that tool from your home, because they don't know your home. They don't know the value.
They don't know that I got
home.
Arcade or whatever.
That's exactly right, because they say, "Oh, well, your home should rent out 90 days." Well, if yours has an arcade and yours is the only one left on the market in the last week, and the other one doesn't, and they look at your house and they're like, "Wow, this is fantastic! This thing's still available. I'm going to book that one, even though it's $2,000 more than what I was expecting to spend, because look at the other one; it's playing.
It pops." So, and I'm going to plug my house, ourdisneyhome.com. That house. That arcade, it's a commercial grade arcade in there. It's got the basketball goals that the goal moves, and it's got the timer and it shoots real live basketballs. And then I've got the
shuffleboard.
I got the air hockey. It's neon. The room is custom painted, so it's black lit to where it pops all the neon. It's got neon carpet. It's got a multi arcade game. It's got a PlayStation and Xbox, two separate TVs. They're all big screen TVs. I got the side by side Tokyo Drift race cars that you can race each other.
Right.
And I got that one because Grandpa can race his granddaughter, because it's not like they both can play, and they both have it's not real cumbersome to get in and out. It's a really good setup. I get so much feedback from that game room, and we set that up. I've got another big screen TV that they have, they're watching football games on or whatever. I get so much feedback. My neighbors, a couple of them have it, not very many, but people book it because of that. And
that's right.
They might like the Harry Potter themed bedroom, they might like the Star Wars themed bedroom,
right?
But that pops. Rank Breeze or whoever, they don't know about that. So that's a thing. So I have to market that for those people.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. So, but there's a lot of tools. And again, I'll give you another plug for myself. That's HomeStayPros.com. Don Crosby, 817-724-4968. If you have any questions anytime, say you've seen the podcast, say Kyle, give me a call.
Book your place, because it's cheaper to book direct, right? Than it is
that too. Okay. Yeah, we have all of our homes on there, and you if any of your friends or family are coming into town, they need a place to stay, I'm sure we can accommodate them somehow. So,
all right. Well, Don, I want to thank you so much for being an open book and sharing so much, because you've had your ups and downs with Airbnb. You've learned a lot, but man, it's a PhD you've got in it that you've earned through experience. And I want to thank you for all the help you've given me on mine and helped me educate me on mine also. But again, thank you so much. And for everybody listening, tune in for the next one, because every person I listen or I interview has a completely different story, and they all have golden nuggets of just so much knowledge of real estate and how it's changed your life. So tune in again. Thank you for listening, and let's do it again. Thank you.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.